Welcome to Monday Monologues, the bi-weekly podcast that breaks down literary devices, tropes, and themes with examples from classic literature. This week, we will be taking a brief look at romance and how to include it in your story, with examples from Othello and Pride and Prejudice, in Episode 2, Flowers, Chocolates, and Promises They Don't Intend to Keep. Romance can be a tricky subject to tackle. Providing the right amount of chemistry between two characters while allowing the story to breathe can be a hard balance to find. Of course, there's also the concept of love language and the different types of love from romantic to platonic. Today, we are simply going to cover how to make a love story originate organically within your book. Within fairy tales or legends, this is often sparked by love at first sight or kidnappings. Thankfully, we don't have to do that. Let's just focus on scene. S-C-E-N-E. That stands for screen time, compatibility, emotion, normality, and evolution. Let's dive into each one of these and break them down one at a time. First off, let's start with screen time. Give your characters time together. They don't have to dominate the entire book, but they do need to have at least one in-depth conversation. Ideally, introduce your love interest as early as you can. That way, the readers can see the characters throughout the book and witness their development. If readers can get interested in the character as a person first, they will become more interested in the relationship later on. In Pride and Prejudice, all the love interests are put forward relatively early in the book. This allows the audience a chance to see Mr. Darcy be rude before his character arc, Elizabeth to recover from her wounded pride. Communication and time together in front of readers helps establish who these people are and how they are together. This makes the readers want to root for them and be interested in seeing how their personal relationships grow and change. In fact, communication is the key to a healthy, strong relationship. For a less than positive example, within the Shakespeare's play Othello, a lack of communication is what results in the end of the relationship between Othello and Desdemona. Well, technically, it ended when Othello believed that his wife Desdemona was cheating on him and then suffocated her, and then stabbed himself when he realized that he had been lied to. You have to hand it to Shakespearean dramas for making every overreaction in your life look reasonable. Secondly, we have compatibility. You've probably heard the saying, opposites attract. This has been disproven. In fact, a majority of compatible relationships share common interests. Opposites might attract, but as the relationship goes on, it creates a divide. If your two love interests spend all of their time on hobbies away from each other, they're simply basing their relationship on attraction alone. And sort of like a used car, this relationship will start to deteriorate before something eventually breaks. And hopefully it's just a relationship. Third is emotion. Relationships cause emotion. Not just romantic ones, all relationships generate emotion. Unless your character is Vulcan, they should not have the same emotional response for both a collection of cards and a loved one. This does not create an engaging romance. Now, what the emotional response is depends on who your character is. Consider the main character, Othello. He has several emotional responses within the play. Most specifically, when he lashes out at Desdemona when he believes that she has cheated on him. This is a very normal response. However, when he smothers her with a pillow, that is not a reasonable response. Consider having your character be more vulnerable around the person that they are interested in. Be more open about their feelings. Or, if your character has a negative relationship in the past, they could be more guarded. Just make sure that the response is reasonable and in character. That brings us to number 4, normality. When developing a relationship with characters, that relationship cannot bend the world around itself. Treating that relationship like a gravitational pull that breaks immersion. It cannot change the narrative or change the characters. The relationship is not a character on its own. In fact, this kind of treatment makes the book hard to read. This does tie back to emotion. How does your character relate to the person they love? It has to be consistent within themselves. Darcy was introverted, shy, and prideful, but he was this way with everyone. It took him months and being forced to share the same space as Elizabeth before he began breaking down his socially awkward walls. Because that's who Darcy was. If your character is tough with a soft side, it is natural that they show this soft side around their loved ones. But if your character is war-hardened with a gruff personality, they cannot suddenly become soft. You could foreshadow this soft side by having them be more lenient or caring towards people that remind them of their loved ones. But just be sure that your characterization stays consistent. And finally, we have evolution. Relationships change people. All relationships impact and change people even a little bit. Tying back to normality for a second, this does not mean that your character should pull a complete 180 as soon as they get a girlfriend. However, they will show different behaviors with the person they love versus the person they are friends with. Consider it this way, you're not going to treat your best friend and your significant other the same way. However, you're still both you in those instances. Sometimes, when you're with a significant other, you will change and modify certain flaws or behaviors. This does not mean that a love interest can scrub the flaws off your characters, or that it's up to their love interest to fix them. Consider Mr. Darcy. He was flawed and rude, and when Elizabeth informed him of this, she did not fix him. She just said that he needed to do better. Mr. Darcy took it upon himself to grow and change, and then prove to Elizabeth that he had done so. This is the kind of positive development that a person that you love can stimulate within you, but you have to be the person to take on the initiative yourself first. So, when writing romance, be sure that your character stays the same. If their relationship completely changes who they are, take a step back and reconsider. Does this character need to have this relationship? What does this relationship add to the plot? They don't need to always have a romantic interest to go alongside your protagonist. Play with different aspects of romance. You don't have to have your characters get explicit for a compelling romance. At its core, what makes romance compelling for a reader is when two developed characters form a bond and develop together. They want to see how this changes them, the struggles that they face, and if they ultimately achieve romantic happiness. To hide little inklings of this budding romance, you can have your characters notice each other first when they walk into a room, or see smaller details that other characters in your stories might miss. If you want to shake up your romance, consider having the pairing already married. Othello and Desdemona were married throughout most of the play, and despite its tragic ending, they were a compelling couple to watch. Be sure to consider the genre in which you're writing. If your character is in the middle of trying to save the world from life-threatening peril, then they might not have time for a coffee date. However, if your character is a single man in a position of great fortune, then he will definitely have the time. That's all for this week. Check in the description for helpful articles on romance, and be sure to vote on your favorite fictional couple in the poll below. And now for your weird writing fact. Did you know that the oldest written work is 5,500 years old to date? So the next time someone asks what you do for a living, you can confidently say that you dabble in the ancient art of writing. Leave a comment for any future themes or tropes you would like covered, and be sure to look at our next episode covering character motivation. with examples from Beauty and the Beast, as well as a Nordic fairy tale, East o' Sun, West o' Moon, on Episode 3, What We Are in the Dark. This has been your Monday Monologue.